At 0150 hours on May 19, 1944, Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton stood shoulder to shoulder with his officers inside the dim, airless Combat Information Center of USS England. The Pacific north of Bougainville was pitch black, the sea flat and unreadable. On the sonar screen, a single contact crept along at 6 knots, deep and deliberate. Pendleton was 37 years old. It was his first war patrol as a commanding officer. He had never sunk a submarine. The contact below him belonged to the Imperial Japanese Navy. Japan had deployed a scouting line of submarines across the approaches to the Marianas, 7 boats, spaced precisely, waiting to report the movement of American carrier forces. They were the eyes of the Japanese fleet. If they succeeded, the coming invasion could be met at sea. USS England was not an imposing ship. She was a Buckley-class destroyer escort, 77 feet shorter than a fleet destroyer, lightly armed, built quickly and cheaply. But she had been designed for one purpose only: killing submarines. And bolted to her forecastle was the weapon that changed everything. 24 short barrels arranged in neat rows pointed forward from the deck. The British called it Hedgehog. Instead of rolling explosives blindly off the stern like traditional depth charges, Hedgehog fired a pattern of projectiles 200 yards ahead of the ship. Each carried a contact fuse. They did not explode unless they struck something solid. Depth charges had dominated anti-submarine warfare for decades, but the statistics were unforgiving. More than 5,000 attacks had produced fewer than 100 confirmed kills, one success for every 60 attempts. Worse, once depth charges detonated, the ocean became chaos. Sonar contact vanished. Submarines slipped away in the confusion. Hedgehog solved that problem. Its projectiles sank silently. Misses made no explosions, no turbulence. Sonar contact was never lost. Early trials showed promise, but little confidence, barely a 5% success rate. Many captains distrusted it. They preferred the familiar thunder of depth charges, even if the numbers were worse. Pendleton believed in numbers. 1 Hedgehog kill for every 5 attacks, compared to 1 depth charge kill for every 80. The math was not subtle. For days earlier, Fleet Radio Unit Pacific had broken a Japanese transmission. Submarine I-16, route north of Bougainville. Estimated arrival, 2,200 hours, May 19th. The intelligence was perfect. England and 2 sister ships had been waiting. The sonar operator's voice cut through the low hum of machinery. Range, 1,500 yards. The contact was diving. Standard Japanese evasion, sharp turns, changing depth, bleeding speed to confuse the attack. The submarine's commander knew he was being hunted. Pendleton gave the order. The first Hedgehog salvo fired forward, 24 projectiles arcing into the darkness before splashing into the Pacific. The ship held sonar contact as the weapons sank. Silence. A miss. I-16 had turned. The second attack came moments later. 1 detonation bloomed at 130 feet. Enough to jolt the ship, not enough to kill. The third attack failed completely. Pendleton studied the fathometer and understood the mistake. The submarine was deeper than expected, over 300 feet. He adjusted. The fourth attack bracketed the target, but I-16 turned inside the pattern once more. Another miss. The fifth salvo left the rails. This time, 4 explosions cracked in rapid succession. Then 6. Then a single, massive underwater detonation rolled through the sea. The shock lifted England's stern clear of the water. Sailors were thrown to the deck. Lights flickered. 20 minutes later, debris surfaced. Oil, shattered wood, fragments of equipment. Submarine I-16 was gone. 107 Japanese sailors died beneath the Pacific. But the fight was only beginning. Another decoded message arrived almost immediately. Japan's 7th Submarine Squadron had deployed a full patrol line across the approaches north of the Admiralty Islands. 7 boats, spaced with mathematical precision. RO-104, RO-105, RO-106, RO-108, RO-109, RO-112, RO-116. Each carried 56 men. Each was waiting to report the American advance. Commander Hamilton Haines issued new orders from Tulagi. England would join the destroyer escorts George and Raby. 3 small ships against 7 submarines. On paper, the odds were absurd. But Pendleton had already learned something vital. 5 Hedgehog attacks. 1 kill. A 20% success rate, 4 times better than anything the trials had promised. And England was sailing straight into the patrol line. The weapon worked. The crew of USS England had heard it with their own ears, sharp, violent detonations instead of the muffled thunder of depth charges. They had seen it with their own eyes, oil boiling to the surface, splintered wreckage drifting in widening slicks. Hedgehog was no longer a theory. It was proof. By dawn on May 21st, the men trusted it. The hunter-killer group sortied from Purvis Bay that afternoon, 3 destroyer escorts sliding into the open Pacific. They formed a standard line-abreast screen, 16,000 yards between ships once darkness fell. Radar sweeps every 30 seconds. Sonar pinging without pause. Engines throttled back to listening speed. The Japanese submarines had gone silent. No radio transmissions. No careless bursts to intercept. No coordinates handed to Fleet Radio Unit Pacific. From here on, it would be done the old way: electronics, discipline, and probability. Pendleton spread the charts across the table in his tiny cabin. The Japanese NA patrol line stretched exactly where Admiral Halsey's task forces had passed before. The logic was obvious. Put submarines where the Americans had already gone. Wait for them to come again. What the Japanese did not know, could not know, was that the Americans already had the map. Submarine patrols followed routines as old as diesel engines. Surface at night to recharge batteries. Dive at dawn. Run submerged through daylight. Surface again after sunset. Predictable. Necessary. Fatal. The window for detection was narrow. A submarine on the surface was vulnerable, but fast. 60 seconds to crash dive. 3 minutes to reach 200 feet. After that, she vanished into darkness. England's crew had drilled for exactly this moment. Sonar operators tracked diving contacts with cold precision, calling out bearing, depth, rate of descent. Fire control calculated future position instead of current location. Hedgehog launchers could be loaded and fired in 90 seconds. 24 projectiles, a circular pattern 130 feet across, sinking silently through the water. Every attack was binary. If the projectiles detonated, the submarine was hit. If they stayed silent, the submarine lived. The math was brutal. 7 submarines. 56 men per boat. 392 sailors. One successful Hedgehog pattern could kill them all in 9 seconds. At 0350 on May 22nd, George's radar picked up a surface contact at 15,000 yards. RO-106. She was charging batteries, her diesels breathing freely in the darkness. She never saw the destroyer escorts until a searchlight snapped on and caught her broadside. The Japanese commander reacted instantly. Crash dive. Ballast tanks flooded. The bow pitched down. In 90 seconds, she was gone beneath the surface. George fired Hedgehog at 0415. 24 projectiles splashed ahead of the ship. Silence. A miss. 10 minutes later, England regained sonar contact. Range 1,400 yards. RO-106 was deep now, turning hard, changing depth constantly. Her commander knew the game. Cut inside the pattern, forced the Americans to guess. Pendleton did not guess. His sonar team tracked every maneuver, every depth change, feeding continuous data into the firing solution. The first attack missed. RO-106 had altered course during the 9 seconds it took the projectiles to sink. 9 seconds was enough to move 150 feet. The second attack came at 0501. 24 Hedgehog rounds arced forward and vanished beneath the surface. 3 detonations cracked almost simultaneously. Then came a single, enormous underwater explosion. The pressure wave slammed into England, shuttering her hull. George and Raby felt it 4,000 yards away. At sunrise, the oil slick stretched for half a mile. Shattered metal floated among debris and dark fuel. No survivors. Kill number 2. Less than 24 hours after I-16, the hunter-killer group reformed its line and continued northeast along the NA patrol route. 6 submarines remained. They were out there: RO-104, RO-105, RO-108, RO-109, RO-112, RO-116, each commander silent, cautious, waiting for nightfall. But silence did not save batteries. At 0600 on May 23rd, Raby's radar detected another surface contact at 22,000 yards. The submarine dove before identification. This commander had learned from RO-100 SIX's death. Stay deep. Stay hidden. But deep water did not mean safety anymore. Rewritten section. Make them guess your depth. RO-104's commander did exactly that. Raby fired the first Hedgehog attack at 0617. 24 projectiles splashed ahead of the ship and sank. Silence. A miss. 3 more attacks followed in quick succession. Each time, RO-104 turned inside the pattern, changed depth, slid away in the darkness. The Japanese commander was skilled, disciplined, patient, always moving during the 9 seconds it took the projectiles to sink. The mathematics stayed just out of reach. George took her turn next. First attack at 0717, miss. Second, third, fourth, misses again, between 0730 and 0810. The pattern was undeniable now. England had the kills. Raby and George did not. Commander Haynes watched England close in for her turn and understood what the numbers were telling him. Whether it was England's sonar team, her fire control solutions, or Pendleton's instincts, she was the killer in this group. Haynes keyed the radio and sent 5 words that would become legend in the U.S. Navy. "Oh hell, go ahead, England." Pendleton ordered the attack. The first Hedgehog salvo missed. RO-104 turned again, slipping just beyond the pattern. Pendleton adjusted. The second attack came at 0834. 10 detonations, maybe 12, erupted almost simultaneously. The explosions merged into a single continuous roar beneath the surface. Then came the sounds no sonar operator ever mistook for anything else. Tearing metal, collapsing bulkheads, the death groan of a pressure hull failing. 3 minutes later, a massive underwater explosion followed. The submarine's batteries had ruptured. At 10:45, oil and debris surfaced. RO-104 was gone. Kill number 3. 72 hours. 3 submarines destroyed. 163 Japanese sailors dead. And England still had 4 targets ahead. At 0120 on May 24th, George's radar picked up another surface contact. RO-116 at 15,000 yards. The submarine dove 10 minutes later. England gained sonar contact at 0150. The rhythm was now familiar. Radar detection. Crash dive. Sonar lock. Hedgehog attack. But RO-116's commander tried something different. Instead of diving deep, 300, 400 feet, he stayed shallow, around 150 feet. Most commanders sought depth to cushion explosions. RO-116's commander gambled that the Americans would set their firing solutions too deep. He was wrong. England's sonar operator called out the shallow depth immediately. Pendleton adjusted the firing solution without hesitation. First Hedgehog attack at 0214. 3 detonations, maybe 5. Not the massive blast of previous kills. No battery rupture. Just the brutal physics of 65-pound projectiles punching through the pressure hull at over 700 feet per second, tearing 3-inch holes through steel. At 150 feet, seawater floods through a 3-inch hole at roughly 400 gallons per minute. There was no dramatic explosion this time. Just the sound of metal groaning under pressure. The submarine grew heavier. Heavier meant deeper. Deeper meant more pressure. More pressure meant more flooding. By 300 feet, the interior temperature soared, 200 degrees, then higher. Superheated air seared lungs. Men collapsed where they stood. Within 6 minutes, everyone aboard RO-116 was dead. The submarine continued sinking. Oil and debris surfaced at 0702, just after sunrise. The slick was small at first, then spread over the next 24 hours, staining several square miles of ocean. 56 more sailors gone. Kill number 4. 5 days. For submarines destroyed. Word reached Admiral Ernest King in Washington, the Chief of Naval Operations, the man who commanded every ship in the United States Navy. He read the action reports carefully. 1 destroyer escort. For confirmed submarine kills in 5 days. All achieved with a weapon most captains still didn't trust. King sent a message to 3rd Fleet. 5 words, simple and final. There'll always be an England in the United States Navy. The phrase raced through the Pacific Fleet within hours. England was now famous. And fame brought attention. On May 25th, Admiral Halsey ordered England pulled from submarine hunting and reassigned to carrier escort duty. She was too valuable to risk. Her crew was experienced, and experienced crews were rare. Commander Haynes pushed back. 3 submarines remained on the NA line: RO-105, RO-108, and RO-109. England had killed 4 in 5 days. The mathematics were clear. Leave her on station, and she could finish the job. Pull her now, and Japanese submarines would continue reporting American fleet movements. The intelligence advantage would be lost. Halsey agreed to one more patrol. At 23:03 on May 26th, Raby's radar detected RO-108 on the surface, 15,000 yards away, 110 nautical miles northeast of Seattle Harbor. The submarine Dove. England gained sonar contact at 1,650 yards. The hunt was not over. Rewritten section. The Japanese commander made the same mistake RO-116 had made. He stayed shallow. He turned hard. He believed the Americans couldn't follow him. Pendleton's crew had already hunted 4 submarines in 5 days. They knew every trick, every shallow dodge, every sudden rudder kick, every desperate attempt to confuse sonar with chaos. Raby rushed in for the kill. Her Hedgehog salvo splashed ahead of the target. Silence. A miss. Division Commander Haynes didn't hesitate. He keyed the radio and repeated the order that was already becoming ritual. Go ahead, England. 2,323 hours. England closed the distance and fired. 24 Hedgehog projectiles arced forward and vanished into the black water. 4 detonations followed, maybe 6, so close together they merged into a single, concussive thunderclap. RO-108 did not flood. It did not sink slowly. Its pressure hull failed instantly. Multiple impacts ruptured the hull at once. The submarine imploded under the surrounding weight of the ocean. One moment, there were 56 men alive inside steel compartments. 3 seconds later, there was nothing but collapsing metal and crushing darkness. Kill number 5. 6 days. 5 submarines destroyed. 279 Japanese sailors dead. In Tokyo, Admiral Somu Toyota studied the patrol reports in silence. 7 submarines had been deployed to the NA picket line. 5 were missing. No distress calls. No emergency transmissions. No wreckage reports. Just disappearance. 1 submarine per day? The pattern was unmistakable. Something was killing his boats. Something fast. Something precise. Something his commanders could not evade. Toyota issued new orders immediately. RO-105 and RO-109 received them on May 27th. Minimum patrol depth, 400 feet. No surfacing unless absolutely necessary. No battery recharging unless critical. At first detection, run silent. No radical maneuvers. Radical maneuvers created noise, and noise gave American sonar something to hold on to. The Japanese were adapting, but they were learning from corpses. England, George, and Raby continued northeast. 2 submarines remained on the NA line, somewhere within 3,000 square miles of ocean. The Americans still held the advantage. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific continued intercepting Japanese transmissions. Every message betrayed position. Every position hinted at pattern. But time was no longer unlimited. England's Hedgehog ammunition was running low. Each attack fired 24 projectiles. 5 kills meant 120 rounds expended. England carried 240 total. 120 remained. 5 more attacks, maybe 6, if luck held. And now the submarines were changing tactics. At 21:45 on May 30th, George's radar detected RO-105 on the surface. The submarine dove instantly. But this time, the Japanese commander went deep, 400 feet, and then did something far more dangerous. He stopped everything. Engines off. Machinery silent. No propeller noise. No vibration. Nothing for sonar to latch onto. England gained contact at 2,200 yards. Weak. Intermittent. Unstable. The sonar operators called it a knuckle, a distorted patch of water creating false echoes. The submarine could be anywhere within 200 yards of the return. Pendleton faced the hardest decision of the patrol. Fire Hedgehog at a weak contact and almost certainly miss, wasting 24 irreplaceable rounds. Or wait, let the enemy decide when to move. Surrender the initiative. Pendleton chose to wait. For hours passed. RO-105 remained silent. Then, At 0230 on May 31st, the signal strengthened. The submarine was moving. Battery power was failing. Electric motors needed recharge. The Japanese commander had no choice left. He surfaced at 0315, but not where England expected. During 4 hours of silent drift, RO-105 had moved nearly 3 miles with the current. George's radar caught her at 13,000 yards. Wrong bearing, wrong grid square. By the time England turned toward the contact, RO-105 had already crash-dived. The hunt was no longer clean. The last submarines had learned, and the margin for error was gone. The Japanese commander bought himself 90 seconds. 90 seconds of diesel air. 90 seconds of battery recharge. Just enough power to run. England re-established sonar contact at 0345. RO-105 was deep and fast, 400 feet, 6 knots, heading northeast, away from the hunting group. This commander was different. He had studied the wreckage left behind. He had learned from 5 dead submarines. He understood the weakness of Hedgehog. Depth. At 400 feet, Hedgehog projectiles needed 17 seconds to reach the target. 17 seconds was an eternity. At 6 knots, a submarine moved 170 feet in that time. The firing solution wasn't about where the submarine was. It was about where it would be. Pendleton ordered the first attack at 0405. 24 projectiles splashed ahead of the contact. Silence. The submarine had turned during descent. Missed by 200 feet. Second attack at 0423. Closer. Still wrong. Missed by 100 feet. RO-105 was varying speed. 6 knots, then 4, then 6 again, destroying prediction, forcing guesswork. England had now fired 48 Hedgehog rounds. 120-48. 72 projectiles remaining. 3 more attacks. Maybe 3.5, if the loaders rushed. That was all. Division Commander Haynes watched from George. This was no longer routine. The previous submarines had died quickly, 1 or 2 attacks at most. RO-105 had survived 2 full salvos and was still running. The Japanese commander was winning the mathematics. Then, at 0447, England's sonar operator noticed something. A rhythm. Every 4 minutes, RO-105 turned 30 degrees to port, then 30 degrees to starboard. Back and forth. Perfectly consistent. The commander believed he was being unpredictable. Humans never are. Pendleton recalculated. He didn't aim for where the submarine was. He aimed for where it always went. He led the target by 200 feet. Third attack at 0508. 24 projectiles vanished into the Pacific. For detonations. Maybe 5. Not enough. RO-105's pressure hull was breached, but not destroyed. Flooding began, but the submarine kept moving. The Japanese commander initiated emergency procedures. Blow ballast tanks. Surface. Abandon ship. Save the crew. He never got the chance. At 0532, England fired again. 8 detonations. This time, the hull didn't fail gradually. It came apart. Emergency blow stopped mid-cycle. The submarine collapsed inward under pressure. Oil and debris surfaced at 0615 after sunrise. Kill number 6. 12 days. 6 submarines. 335 Japanese sailors dead. Admiral Halsey read the report at 3rd Fleet Headquarters. 6 submarines destroyed by 1 destroyer escort. 12 days. 1 weapon system most captains still didn't trust. The record was unprecedented. Unmatched. Almost unbelievable. Halsey issued new orders on June 1st. Pull England from submarine hunting immediately. The mission was complete. England had proven Hedgehog beyond doubt. Every destroyer escort in the Pacific Fleet would receive updated doctrine from England's action reports, firing solutions, attack geometry, timing tables. But 1 submarine remained. RO-109. She had received Toyota's warning after RO-108 died. She abandoned her patrol station, ran deep and silent toward Truk, and survived the war. Her crew learned the truth months later. 6 sister submarines destroyed in 12 days. 1 ship, 1 weapon. A weapon they had never even heard of. England received the Presidential Unit Citation in July, one of only 3 destroyer escorts to earn it during the war. The citation was brief. For extraordinary heroism in action against enemy Japanese submarines. The words didn't explain the achievement. The numbers did. British forces had launched 5,174 depth charge attacks. 85 kills. A 1.6% success rate. Early Hedgehog trials averaged 1 kill per 26 attacks. England rewrote the mathematics. 6 submarines destroyed in approximately 15 Hedgehog attacks. A 40% success rate. 25 times more effective than depth charges. 8 times better than Hedgehog averages. By September 1944, Hedgehog was standard on every destroyer escort in the Pacific. Because one ship proved the math. And the math was merciless. Training protocols changed across the fleet. Sonar operators studied England's tracking logs, learning how her crew maintained contact through evasive turns and depth changes. Hedgehog teams drilled England's reload timing, shaving seconds between salvos. Fire control officers memorized England's lead calculations, learning to aim not at where submarines were, but where they had to be. The results followed. In the Atlantic, Hedgehog sank 47 German U-boats by war's end. 268 attacks. 47 kills. A 17.5% success rate. Still the most effective anti-submarine weapon of the war. But no ship ever matched England. Not in the Atlantic. Not in the Pacific. Not anywhere. 6 submarines in 12 days remained unmatched. Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton received the Navy Cross in August. 1 decoration. 6 submarines. The citation praised his tactical brilliance, his crew's discipline, the effectiveness of the weapon system. It did not mention the thing that mattered most. Mathematics. Pendleton trusted numbers when other captains trusted tradition. He calculated when others guessed. He predicted when others reacted. And the numbers were right. USS England continued escort duty through the summer of 1944. Convoy protection. Carrier screening. Anti-submarine patrols. She never found another submarine. She never fired Hedgehog in combat again. On October 31, 1944, a kamikaze aircraft struck England off Leyte Gulf. The bomb penetrated the forward engine room. 37 sailors killed. 25 wounded. The damage was catastrophic. Repairs would take 6 months and cost more than building a new ship. The Navy made a cold calculation. England was not worth saving. She was towed to Manus Island, stripped of useful equipment, and sold for scrap. In November 1946, she was cut apart in a salvage yard. The ship that sank 6 submarines in 12 days ended her life as razor blades and tin cans. But the record stood, and still stands. 80 years later, USS England remains the greatest submarine killer in naval history. Walton Pendleton survived the war. Promoted to commander. Assigned to escort divisions in Alaska. Spent the final year of the war hunting Japanese submarines in the North Pacific. He never found another. The war ended in August 1945. Pendleton retired from the Navy in 1961 after 34 years of service. He died in 1973 at age 66, buried at Arlington National Cemetery. His gravestone mentions the Navy Cross. It does not mention 6 submarines. It does not mention 12 days. It does not mention the moment naval warfare changed. The Navy tried to remember. In October 1960, guided missile cruiser USS England, DLG-22, was commissioned. She served for 32 years, longer than the original England ever lived. When she was decommissioned in 1994, the name disappeared from the fleet. Admiral King's promise faded. There has been no USS England since. The original Hedgehog launcher sits in storage at the National Museum of the United States Navy. Rusted. Silent. Forgotten. The placard lists success rates. It does not mention England. It does not mention Pendleton. It does not mention 12 days. Japanese records recovered after the war confirmed every kill. I-16. RO-106. RO-104. RO-116. RO-108. RO-105. Final positions matched England's attack coordinates exactly. 335 sailors confirmed dead. Japanese after-action reports spoke of explosions above, flooding below, death within minutes. No one survived to explain the circular pattern of projectiles, the contact fuses, the forward-thrown mortars that never broke sonar contact. The British invented Hedgehog. The Americans refined it. England proved it. History remembers carriers. Battleships. Big ships with big guns. Destroyer escorts were expendable, cheap to build, easy to replace. 700 were built during the war. Most were scrapped within 5 years of peace. England lasted barely 2 years after victory. The ship that sank 6 submarines in 12 days was not worth the steel she was made from. But the mathematics endure. And the ocean remembers.